Sakyadhita, Australia. First up, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands throughout Australia on which we are meeting. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. And now I'll ask Venerable Chikwan if she could give us a brief blessing for this webinar.
I'll just do a very short chant, which is to bless everybody and to invite all the wholesome Dharma beings to be present, or Jill offers this wonderful presentation. 광명온대 준변밥계 공양시반 모리양불법승 온향진원 옴바라트비아홈 옴바라트비아홈
Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Chikwan. Just to let everyone know, we are recording this webinar and it will be available online later this week. We've allocated an hour, but it may go longer depending on questions. But so please feel free to put your questions in the chat room at any time, but also please feel free to leave, particularly on the hour. So it's a great pleasure to introduce our special guest, Jill Jamerson, and her topic, the crisis in Myanmar. Jill has been a peace activist most of her life, and she's a Buddhist practitioner in the Zen tradition. She's been a trainer in peace building and conflict transformation in Myanmar for over 25 years. Prior to this, she was involved in humanitarian and development work in Africa, Southeast Asia, and India. Jill's been actively involved with the International Network of Engaged Buddhists for many years. She's a member of the advisory committee and has founded a chapter of Buddhist Peace Fellowship in Melbourne. In 2007, she received a United Nations Award for Outstanding Women in Buddhism. Jill, first of all, could you tell us a bit about the Network of Engaged Buddhists? Who are they and what exactly are they able to do in Myanmar?
Well, it's a network of engaged Buddhists, network as opposed to organisation, and the focus is on Kalyana Mitra, on spiritual friends. So it's support for each other. Most of the members are from the Asian region, even though there are members across many countries around the world, but mostly they're from Sanghas and communities in Asia with limited resources, but we're there to support each other and to bring the Buddhist values and practice to social issues. And so we have, for example, a conference every year, and one, for example, was Buddhist-Muslim dialogue, which Chikwan was present at a few years ago in Kuala Lumpur. And this was at a time when there was rising hate speech in Myanmar. So it was to address that issue, bringing together many Sangha members, monks and nuns from Myanmar, as well as other countries, to discuss this. Another program of recent one of INEB has been a female Sangha initiative for social transformation, empowering women's Sanghas in the Southeast Asian region for gender equality, women-led peace building, and initiatives in promoting religious pluralism.
That sounds amazing.
So the program for Myanmar wasn't able to go ahead because of the coup, but hopefully later they'll be able to be included. But there's also been training in Taiwan last year for female Sangha members. So there's a whole range of initiatives. And one was that I was part of, a small Buddhist delegation to Myanmar back in 2007, just after the Saffron Revolution. And it was to bear witness to the suffering at that time, which was deep. That was a time when we found out there were 70 monks killed. Monasteries were taken away from monks, and 300 monks were imprisoned. And so since that time, one of the other members, Alan Sanake from Berkeley Zen Center, and I have been particularly involved with Myanmar with the peace building training and other programs in Myanmar.
Jill, I'm sorry, getting feedback. Could everyone mute themselves, please? Well, we've all heard about the terrible coup, the military coup that happened last February. What do you know about the background to that, and how were the military able to take power, and just how brutal has it been for the people?
Well, extremely brutal. But just the background to the coup was that the senior general, Min Aung Hlaing, was due to retire this year at the age of 65. And last year he asked Aung San Suu Kyi, who was state councillor, in effect president, he wanted to be president, and she said no. And the other thing was the election last November, Aung San Suu Kyi's party, the National League for Democracy, won an even more resounding majority than they had the previous election 4 years earlier. So that, and also the National League of Democracy were planning on trying to change the constitution and the military-led government, dominating government. So that is the background to the coup, but one has to look at the background of, the military dictatorship since 1962. So what's that, nearly 60 years, 6 decades. And so the same cycles of oppression, violence have continued over those years. And there's been uprising, as in 1988, the student uprising when 3,000 were killed. 2007, the Saffron Revolution, when the monks came out into the street chanting love and kindness. 2017, the massacre, genocide of the Rohingya, when 1 million people were pushed out to Bangladesh and many were killed and houses burnt. And so the same thing that has happened to the Rohingya is now happening across Myanmar.
So in effect, it's an extension of what happened.
Yes. And it's an extension, and the desire to maintain control.
So, as we know, Buddhism is the main religion in Myanmar, but what is the situation there for the Sangha, for the monks and the nuns? I mean, how many can be involved with the struggle against the military, and how can they?
Well, just to give a little bit of background on the Sanghas, just in terms of there's, most people are Buddhist. I think it's about nearly 80 or 90% are Buddhist, and a small percentage of Christian, Muslim, few Hindus, etc. And the other thing is that the majority of people are Baima majority Buddhists, that's central Myanmar, and all around the edges of Myanmar, the ethnic minorities. And so it's been Baima Buddhist domination over this time. And so the monks and nuns, there's been domination of Buddhists. And so the ethnic minorities have felt left out. And there are Buddhists in Shan State, ethnic minorities in Mon State and various others, and also in Rakhine State. So, yeah, the situation for, let's go back to 2007, the Saffron Revolution, when 100,000 monks were walking around Myanmar challenging loving kindness. They were drawing attention to the poverty of the country, and all were united in that way. But since then, in about 2013, there's been what you'd call a nationalistic group of monks has formed called Ma Bata, and that means for purity of race and religion. So obviously racist, and to pushing for the domination again of the Burma majority. And so these.
Sorry, I don't know why we're getting feedback, Jill. Yeah. Everyone's muted.
Yes, I can't hear it, and my husband has turned his computer off, so he's yeah. I can hear a faint echo.
Yeah. So these are the monks we call the bad monks, who are inciting racism and giving Buddhism a bad name in Myanmar.
Well, the leader, Uwiritu, he was written up in Time magazine. He called himself the Bin Laden of Buddhism. Others may have seen that. But some of the peace building training that I've been doing over the years with many different groups of people, from former political prisoners to students, but also to some of the monks and Ma Bata monks. And I've been able to do that through connection with one of the monks. Maybe I should show some of those images now. And because what I found is that most of them aren't extremists. It's really that there's very limited education. And what we found when we went to Myanmar in 2007, our delegation, we visited some of the monasteries, monastic education, and it's the poorest monks, the poorest children who go to the monastic schools. And for boys, there's very few job opportunities, and many of them become either monks or soldiers. So there were at that time 400,000 soldiers and 400,000 monks. So that's sort of the background to the monks, and very limited education. So that's where, when we talk about, Ma Bata, they're easily led. And in a country that's used fear and top-down approach, they're very easily led. So perhaps I should share some of these images to give you a little story about the Sangha and about I'm sharing the screen.
You are sharing. We can see that.
Okay, so just to start with, this is Shwe Dagon Pagoda, if anyone has been to Myanmar, and it's an extraordinary, many aspects to this, many pagodas in this one. But to show that people go there every night. There are so many people there in families, and so there's this for people who've been suffering for so long. The practice of Buddhist practice and other practices, other religions, are a form of solace to the people. And up in the north of Myanmar, I visited several nunneries, and this is one where young nuns were studying. The opportunity given to nuns, because education is so low, so it's like same as for the monks, that's the opportunity for study. Some of the nuns were running kindergartens. This was one kindergarten, and you see they had virtually no equipment. This is in a monastery that the nuns are running. And the nuns here were involved in as primary school, and this is at lunchtime, monks in the primary school. This was a workshop I did in Shan State for monks and nuns who were already involved in community activities. These monks and nuns were running what was called One Mitta. It was a program, a loans program with a very low interest rate, and the loans program was run out of the monastery. And so people would come together to the many different monasteries where this program was run from, come together to exchange, to deposit money or to withdraw money. And it was a way, as a form of peacekeeping in itself, because people coming together, some were Muslims and from different ethnicities, would come together, get to know each other. So it was a powerful program. But this was the opportunity for monks and nuns here in this, small group discussion, sharing the stories of conflict and finding the commonalities and seeing how to work with these. At this monastery, because as a foreigner, even then, 10 years ago, there was strict security. So someone was looking out at the window to make sure the authorities weren't coming, in which case I would have had to hide. They had a hiding place for me. This was one of the lay people who was in the training, and he was showing in this diagram he wrote on the board excuse me, that one of the circles at the top represented the military. They built a base, a military base, and the circle on the other side they built was the construction company. And the military owed money didn't have enough money to give to the company. So at the bottom here, you see lots of small circles. There are 7 villages. And so the military said to the company, take these villages instead of the money. And so this is what one of the conflicts that was being discussed amongst the monks and nuns and some lay people at this particular gathering, because land confiscation has been the core issue of most of the conflicts that I have been involved in. So they discussed this, and it was really interesting. In discussing it together, they said, well, if people lose their village, they will have no land. They won't be able to have land. They'll have to work. They won't have a way of their own livelihoods. They'll have to work as itinerant workers, probably for this construction company. And so, how can we get these villages? What can we do to get the villages their land back? So they looked at possibilities that maybe they should go and ask the military how much. What was it they owed the company? Maybe they could try and raise that money because it was more important to get the land back. So that's an example of one of the issues. And several years after that, we went back to the village where these people had come from. And so they had been successful in being able to negotiate to get that land back. And they also shared these issues in the meetings that I went to in the monastery with the credit program. So this has another little story about it, because this monk here, Uttadama, a few years before this particular training with monks and nuns in another monastery, someone said to me, there were monks who'd been in prison and they needed trauma healing. And a friend of mine had given me arnica, homeopathic arnica, and which I took to the training. But before we could get going almost, one of the monks stood up tall and straight and said, "We're sons of the Buddha. We're perfect as we are. We don't need any trauma healing." So we tried a different tack. So we let go of the trauma healing part. And this monk was one of them, and he's become an ardent peace builder. And we often co-facilitate, co-facilitating the peace building training. And he has opened the door to many of the monasteries, that the so-called, the nationalistic monks. So who knows what comes out of that? But what they have appreciated very much is learning lots of tools that they can use in their communities to engage their communities and to to strengthen their sanghas and to build, because they've been enclosed in the monasteries, haven't reached out to people. And we've also discussed the issues, which I can go into later, how they respond to that. But it's been a unique situation because mostly for women to work with a monk is unusual, and particularly a foreigner. But because, partly because I don't come from an NGO, there's a friend in Burma Gui who's been raising funds by selling things at a market to support this. So there's something that, feel very privileged to have these opportunities. So part of the peace building training, or maybe I could go into that later, but we use, particularly with Buddhists, use the Four Noble Truths as a model and look at the Four Noble Social Causes. I could go into that later, but this is looking at the root causes, underneath.
That will be terrific, Jill. But I just bringing you back to the current situation, and obviously, as well as the country facing a military coup, they're also facing a pandemic of COVID-19. So what is happening with that?
Let me come to that just in a moment.
Sure.
Just to go through some of the nuns who do this training, getting confidence to be able to work with their communities, and women's groups who are on the border and inside Myanmar. Both sides came together for this workshop because there was so much conflict between them. They didn't trust each other. So this was alliance building to build a strong women's movement through sharing their stories. And I was there just beginning of last year, and this is with a local organisation that I've been working with over years, who've been working with conflicts in many states. And we do inner peace building such as doing walking meditation in the forest. And now to the coup. This is the crowds of people that go right up the street. And today is the 14th anniversary, so 14th anniversary of the Saffron Revolution. So it's a good day to be talking. And back on the 1st of February or soon after, the streets were filled with people like this, protesting, peaceful protests. This monk is holding up a sign that a couple of people have been released, but he said the whole of Myanmar is like a prison. So some courageous monks are speaking out. And just to share a few stories, because one doesn't hear of the people who have been, courageously what they've done in the past. This monk here, this was at a conference, an INEB conference in Taiwan in 2015, violence in central Myanmar, and he stood in front of a mosque with about several hundred people and said, kill me first. So he saved their lives. This is a monk I met a few years ago who was arrested the day before the coup. He's now in prison. He was arrested because he said, whoever ripples the peace in Myanmar will be known as, will be something like the worst of the criminals. But this monk is an engaged Buddhist. He was imprisoned in the Saffron Revolution, and this building over here was building a meditation centre, and upstairs a training centre for unemployed youth. And there's one more. This is one of the leaders of the Saffron Revolution, another one who became an ardent peace builder. And he came and said, he felt so sorry about the numbers of monks that had died. He wanted to be a peace builder. So this is in his peace building. Now, this is some of the monks, one of the monks here who is working with SEM and INEB in distributing funds that, for example, like the Australian Buddhists who some of you here have so generously given, has gone to the monks and nuns in Myanmar. I can stop sharing at this stage.
Jill, can I just... Oh, sorry.
Do you want me to go back to it?
No, just go on to perhaps talk about COVID.
Okay.
But I also wanted to ask, Jill, is the Saffron Revolution, is that when Aung San Suu Kyi came into power?
Oh no, much before that. In 1988, she was back in Myanmar because her mother was unwell, and after 3,000 students were killed, she became involved with the movement for democracy. So there's been a movement for democracy really since then, and she stood for the elections in 91, and it was at 91%, or over 90%, she got the National League of Democracy and was put in prison after that. She was in house arrest until about 11 years ago. And once she was released, then there was the elections in 2016. She got a massive majority. She's so dearly loved in Myanmar. Mm-hmm. And then she was the elections last year. And so she's been in prison on trumped up charges since the 1st of February that would give her 75 years in jail. She's now 75 or 76. So they obviously just want to get rid of her.
Okay, so I was asking about the impact of the global pandemic of COVID-19 on this situation, and what, if anything, have the military done to help the people? And what is the situation like?
Well, the situation is dire. It's the most urgent need at this stage. The military have done the opposite of helping people. They've denied access to treatment of people. In a way, they're using COVID to kill people off. It saves their military hardware. And after the peaceful demonstrations in the first couple of months, the military crackdown has been huge, using aerial bombardment. It's been a huge onslaught, but COVID has also been a huge onslaught. 1 in 3 have had COVID. Many people have died. There's no figures kept. No one knows how many, but there've been many new crematoriums have been built, and huge queues for crematoriums. And just to give an example of how the way in which the military have, jeopardizing any treatment, they put out a fake call that someone had needed help. And when 3 medics went there, they were arrested and they were forced to go back to their clinic, and another 2 were arrested and jailed. So, and the doctors and nurses at the start of the coup were the ones, some of the 3/4 of the civil servants in Myanmar have come out against, everyone is against the military. And everyone, over the years I've been there, everyone wants peace. So what the military are doing is providing the opposite. And as far as COVID is concerned now, what some of the monks are doing are trying to build oxygen cylinder factories. And many people are so incredibly supportive of each other, sharing what they can. I had a message from someone who's working with nuns, and the nuns, many of them have got COVID, are in hospital, but others are looking after the younger nuns. They're trying to find material, resources to give to communities. But that's another issue about the impact of COVID and the coup on the Sangha. But
Jill, is any vaccine getting into Myanmar?
We had an INEB, we have been having INEB Zoom calls every month this year and last year too with COVID, supporting people in other places. But this year, and the last one we had, Dr. Sasa, who's the head of the National Unity Government, was saying that they were planning to get in 4 million doses of vaccine the next day, and they somehow got it through. I mean, it's huge logistical challenges because Thailand, one border, there's COVID is rampant there, and also the military government in Thailand is in cahoots with the military government in Myanmar, and they've closed the border for anyone. They will hand them back any activists who go into the border, and they're jeopardizing the cross-border transportation of resources to lots of extent. So people have become incredibly creative in terms of both in terms of how they protest and how they're supporting each other and how they're managing to share resources.
So, I'm sorry, I just don't know what's causing this feedback, but anyhow, we're sort of diverting a bit from Buddhist Myanmar, but looking at the political situation, if you know the campaign was successful and the military were ousted, is there any credible alternative with Aung San Suu Kyi virtually in prison?
Well, there's an even more credible alternative now than the NLD in lots of ways, because the National Unity Government comprises representatives from the Parliament who were elected last November, and also ethnic leaders, and they've been absent in the past. So it's a much more representative governing body, so to speak. And they've also made apologies to the Rohingya. So they've reached out across, and they have some very impressive people who have taken up the positions of the ministries. And they've also got in the wide diaspora around the world, they've got representatives, connections with the different ministries. So it's like a big network that reaches out across the world. And they're, what they need is recognition, and recognition as an alternative, because the junta, the military commander who's calls himself the Prime Minister now, and he's the one who's responsible for the genocide of the Rohingya. So this is the leader. The choices are stark.
And
both sides.
Jill, they're asking for recognition from the UN or from the
recognition
global community.
Yeah, they're asking for recognition by governments around the world. I'm part of a group, WAM, Women Activists for Myanmar, and lobbying politicians to recognise, both to recognise the National Unity Government and also specifically as a women's organisation campaigning against for the release of all political prisoners, particularly women. I mean, the torture and there are something like 1,100 people have been killed, and there are 6,000 or 7,000 people are detained, including 20 monks in prison. So, according for the release of political prisoners, and as far as the UN is concerned, there is the UN representative from Myanmar came out very courageously in the UN with the three-finger salute, saying he was on the side of the National Unity Government. So now there's an issue. It's been deferred until November, whether he can stay in that position or whether there will be a military government representative to replace him. But that will be a critical thing to have him there.
Jill, I think the aid groups are trying to help Myanmar. Are they able to get through? I mean, I'm thinking Red Cross, the World Vision, all those sorts of groups.
Yeah, Red Cross would be dealing with Red Cross in Myanmar, which doesn't get through directly. What the National Unity Government are advocating that, people support the local organisations who are on the ground, who have got the networks. And that's where INEB, International Network of Engaged Buddhists, SEM, is working through all our local networks. But other organisations are also working through the local networks. Let me just tell you what I spoke with a monk who was handing out some of the support to monks and nuns, Venerable Mandala. And he's someone who was in the monastery in Mandalay and the abbot of that monastery was a supporter of the military, so he left, and also because the military had occupied the school. This just shows you how difficult it is for the Sangha. So he's now at a monastery where I've done a lot of peace building training in Shan State, and he feels insecure because there are people. The army, calls on him quite often. But anyway, we asked him what could people do to support, and he said, what could we tell Australian Buddhists? And he said to tell people about the coup, and to for the importance of recognition. But he also, there are other, he said, I asked him about how monks were responding to trauma and the fear that people are experiencing. And he said, people are calling him, feeling a loss of their future and want to die. But he says he doesn't hear of suicide and people are used to trauma and challenges. But he is there, he's committed. He said, he was born there. I have my right and duty to work for freedom, justice and equality. None should live in fear. So it's a duty of being human, lay or monk, to fight against injustice. Otherwise, there can be no peace. We want all ethnicities and religions to have the same opportunities and equal rights. So that's part of his message, but I could, maybe later on someone might like to ask about, what about the Sangha? How are they surviving?
Look, we'll cross to questions shortly. So if you have a question, you could put it in the chat room or just simply put your hand up, and hopefully we'll be able to work around the feedback. Jill, what's your thoughts about the future for Myanmar? What's your thoughts about it? It just sounds so depressing and so difficult.
Yes, well, it does from outside, and it does. The military, they have got so many resources, and just been to Russia to get more, and Ukraine, and with Pakistan, and just recently, the National Unity Government, they're taking up a become defensive. They've moved from the non-violent approach because they've got virtually no weapons. So it's so uneven, but they so strongly believe that, it will be possible in the long run, and they're prepared. People are prepared to die. And I spoke to a good friend I've worked with over the years who was on the border, and I could talk with her. She's a journalist, and so many journalists have been imprisoned, and she ran to the border with her son and is still reporting. She won't leave. I said, I offered her, I said, does she need to register with a country like Australia to be able to get out if need be? She's committed to staying there. And I asked about, also asked her too, what is the level of fear? And she said people are, afraid, but they're so committed. And it's almost like they're, another quality I've seen amongst the people is people see the possibility in the smallest places. And so that's what it's like. They're not going into despair. They're working for change and together. I should just mention one other, just a campaign that the women did on International Women's Day, just to show their creativity. If I got a moment to do
that. Sure.
It was really interesting. I tuned into a webinar on International Women's Day because I've been strongly involved with women's organisations. And so there were 3 women who were in hiding, and they said, they've been campaigning during the day, but they couldn't go home to their home, and they were obviously, they would hear a noise, and they didn't know whether there was anyone coming to get them. What they've been doing, they had cut up some of their longis, their sarongs, with flags, because tradition is that if a man walks beneath a longi, he will bring evil and bad luck to him. So they strung these flags cut out from their laundries to the entrance of towns, and so the military wouldn't come through. So it was that's where they're being so creative in different ways and boosting their morale.
Jill, I'll pick up on that question. What can the Sangha do, in this fight against the military? Talking about the sort of the good Sangha, not the ones who are inciting racism.
Well, many of the sort of moderate monks, they've been afraid to come out, but actually today being the anniversary of Saffron Revolution, there was a report in this morning's Democratic Voice of Burma that I'm watching, that monks had gathered in Mandalay and were holding up banners and saying that, to say that the military, they must stop the violence and must, listen to the will of the people, because everyone wants. So some of the monks are supporting. Many of the monks have been supporting the Civil Disobedience Movement. I didn't mention that before, but that's been an extraordinary non-violent movement, and the monks have supported that. They've helped foster dialogue between the police and the protesters, and many of them are trying to support their communities. But one of the challenges is that if the lay sanghas going to the monks, they are at risk. The lay people are at risk by going to monk because they would be seen as being part of the Civil Disobedience Movement. So lay people aren't giving to the monks, and the monks haven't. So therefore, that reciprocal relationship is being broken, and the monks can't give solace at a time when it's so badly needed. Some are, like the monk Venerable Mandala that I spoke to in Pierre Duen. You're silent.
Sorry, I'd muted myself to try and stop the feedback. I mean, that's really shocking. What does it say about the future for Buddhism in Myanmar if it's breaking down like that?
Well, there's been reports, even in one of the papers, Myanmar Now, and the head of that is now in Australia. He was brought to Australia along with a number of other journalists, but he reported how, unless the military are defeated, he said, there's not much future for Buddhism in Myanmar, which is incredibly, just tragic and so sad to contemplate, because Myanmar has had such an impact on the West with, so many teachers have had their connections with Myanmar and the teachings from Myanmar.
Jill, we've got 15 minutes left, and we do have some questions. I'll throw to the questioners, but we'll see how we go with the feedback. The first one is from Venerable Zhiwei. If you could unmute yourself, Venerable.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much, Jill, for your very interesting presentation and also for sharing those powerful images. May I know how your Zen practice has helped to ground you in your peace activities in Myanmar, especially as you encounter the atrocities on the ground?
Yes, well, practice is a life savior. It's the practice that of deep listening, and this is part of the peace building training that we do. Is the core part of it is the deep listening, and deep listening to the cries of the other, and with that deep listening, connecting with that pain, so that the other becomes no other than oneself, and something arises. Compassion, love, something changes. So to be able to support people during the trainings, and even now, yes, it's been very important, as well as doing other things like spending some time in the garden, because and going for walks, and It's heartbreaking. The women that I'm working with, the women activists of Myanmar, young women, they're mostly young women from Myanmar in this group, and their family is still in Myanmar. They're here as students. They're incredibly bright. They're trying to study, and they're very active in the movement. And they're so stressed. They're sick and stressed because of what's happening in Myanmar. So, to be able to help be a support for them as well. There's no solution. There's no solution but to be able to support them and to see what's next.
The next is from Sky.
One of my memories of Myanmar was always the monks and the nuns doing their particularly the monks doing alms round every day. And if the situation as it is, what's happening for them? How are they doing?
No, well, this is where they can't. It's really, really difficult. That's why it's support through INEB and SEM to be able to support some of the monks, because there's no arms round. It's a very different story in Thailand. Venerable Dharmananda, some of you may know, she, instead of doing alms round, they've put out tables outside their monastery and distributing food, and people have been giving them food to be able to give to everyone. So it's sort of a reverse arms round. But of course, they can't do that in Myanmar, and that relationship is broken.
Oh my goodness.
Someone says, are there some big temples?
Sorry.
Sorry, I thought I was reading a question.
No, that's okay. It's me, Jill.
Oh, okay. What were you saying, Chikwang?
I'm just wondering, because I have Nabuku who's staying with me, and she spent quite a number of years recently in Myanmar as a nun. And when I saw the pictures, I noticed that the temples seemed really large with a lot of support. And I'm just wondering if these very large temples with a lot of support are being supported by the junta, by the coup, by the government.
I don't know. I mean, I've been to many different monasteries. Certainly the difference after the Saffron Revolution, and these Mabatha monks are obviously been getting gifts from the monks to win them over to their side. But that just reminds me, hearing there's an American nun, forgotten her name, who's been in Myanmar for many years and living at a nunnery, and she said the current situation, it's so important that everyone practices loving kindness meditation, and particularly to those that one may not agree with. So that as another practice is really very important. And I find myself too, the practice of metta, even if it's not directly in my tradition, it's a very important one that, in terms of dealing with the heart brokenness and just seeing what's there.
Thank you.
But I'm not sure. I mean, most of the monasteries are fairly basic, and particularly the ones that I visit and stay in, and where I do a lot of the training is in monasteries.
These ones pictures I saw were very fancy. The temples were very big. They had a lot of nuns. A lot of the nuns had private, apparently they call even their little kutis monasteries, but they have their own little house. Yeah. It was very big. And I was a bit surprised, actually, too. Yeah.
Yes, well, I don't know. I've been working through INEB with civil society organisations and the Sanghas involved there. And they have built, there's the Engaged Buddhist Network in Myanmar, hubs of monks and training and engaged work. And through that, they've taken monks to Cambodia to look at genocide, in Thailand to look at, community development projects, and many of them are adopting, self-sustainable ways, growing their own food and supporting the communities, reaching out. So that's a lot of what the training I've been doing is with the tools to be able to reach out to communities. So they may not be big and fancy, but they've been doing some really great things, and I'm sure they will continue.
No, I think they're fantastic. There are people actually doing this. Thank you, Jill.
Sky has a comment, I think.
I was just going to say Virinyani is one of the American nun.
Yes, that's it.
Endor Arianyani, who's no longer, she's Swiss, but she's not there. But Virinyani's still there. But I don't think she can go out of her temple at the moment because of COVID.
Yes.
They're pretty much locked inside because of the risk of COVID. So you've got the two working together, I think.
Yes. I mean, last year, before the coup, a lot of the monasteries and nunneries were used for people who, for isolation and people who were sick and treating people. But this year, that's right, they're closed. And, even other centres in Thailand who are helping nuns, have been helping nuns in Myanmar for their well-being and offering training, they're closed as well.
We have a comment, I think, from Sirini. Sirini, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you. I'm in the sun. I don't know whether you can see. Sorry. I was saying that's an amazing presentation. Thank you so much, Jill. Really enjoyed it.
Oh.
I was also wondering in terms of fluency in English for the monastics, are they able to communicate freely in English, or is that a difficulty? Is that a challenge?
They don't. English is not allowed to be taught. The monk that I spoke with recently, he was forbidden at his monastery to learn English, but he studied it himself in Mandalay by going meeting with tourists at some of the monasteries around Mandalay. And many have done that. I have found that the rickshaw wallahs had dictionaries in the back of their bikes, and they've learnt that way. And so, yes, I have to work with not so much translators, but co-facilitators. I work with someone so that in that way. But yes, I mean, it's part of the downgrading of education. Very little money has been spent. 0.4% was spent on education, 0.5% of the gross national product on health, whereas 45% was on defence, on their own country.
The reason I ask that is, I guess, if the language barrier isn't there, then we can offer other supports like, trauma support and things like that from overseas or Australia, but we can't do that if the language barrier is there.
No, well, it's not just language. I think that, a lot of it is about, because there's such a legacy of fear over 6 decades, fear. And so there's a lot of the work that I've been doing that is trust building exercises, sharing stories to be able to see the commonalities, reaching out across difference. We have, monks and nuns and lay people, or farmers and nuns. We have different groups, but always to reach out, to listen to the stories across those different. So I think, offering support to support the monks and nuns through, then they're there, could be able to offer if they can, but they've been isolated to some extent.
What kind of support do you think that we can offer the monks and nuns, the monastics?
Well, the easiest way is money that, I can send to INEB and this monk and others. There's another person who's working with nuns. She said the program's been temporarily stopped, the training, but she's continuing to work with the alumni from the program and the nuns to support them. So, the money would be distributed to the monks and nuns to continue supporting them, because they're cut off from their usual sources of support.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jill. And I guess at some stage, if there is that information also can filter through to us, that will be good for us to get involved.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Sarani.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, are there any other questions? We are getting very close to time. If not, Jill, I just wanted to ask, giving aid financially, what can we as Western Buddhists do?
Well, I mean, giving financial support is one thing, and to the practice of metta, but I guess others might have suggestions too. I mean, just hearing about the situation, how do you respond? In a way, what we engaged Buddhist practice is about seeing that we're not separate from others and the suffering, and that we have an inescapable responsibility for the well-being of all. So, how do we respond to that?
I'm also going to share your details for anyone who'd like to give to you, and that money, I understand, goes to the Network of Engaged Buddhists.
Yes, thank you.
So I'll leave that on the screen. Is Venerable Jouet still with us? Because I promised I'd let her tell us about her forthcoming conference before we wrap up. Are you still with us, Venerable Jouet? Okay, well.
She has left a comment in the chat.
Yeah.
If someone would like to read that out.
Can you read it, Jack?
Sure. It says, Jill, thank you for your very informative talk. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. Sorry. An international symposium on humanistic Buddhism will be held over the weekend of the 6th to the 8th of November. It will be an opportunity for us to reflect on and co-create humanistic responses to the crises we face. Please feel free to check out and register to this free symposium that brings together over 30 international thought leaders here. Yes, I've seen a lot about this symposium. It does look excellent. And there's a link there in the chat window. Or you can Google International Symposium on Humanistic Buddhism.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Jack. Any other questions before we wrap up? Is still anything else you'd like to say? Have we covered everything? Oh no, Venerable Chikwan has a question.
Not so much a question, but Jill, I know you've done a lot of work with this disobedience movement of people, and many of them are living either overseas or in Thailand. Are there things that also can be done to help them directly? Because they're, of course, doing a lot of the work, and sometimes in quite difficult conditions in Thailand and overseas. Do you have any thoughts on how to help them? Because some of them are people dissidents who've got over the border and who are also struggling. Others are still in hiding, and yet they're doing quite a lot of quite dangerous work, really.
Yes, well, yes, I don't know how one can support them from here. I mean, there are people who are there who are doing the support, and we can support INEB and SEM for doing that work, because INEB is based in Bangkok, and there's many organisations in the network that are in Thailand, and like International Women's Partnership for Peace and Justice, and lots of organisations. They're doing what they can to support people. It's hard from here to be able to do that directly, other than At least I don't know how, other than through sending support. When one's there, it's much easier to be able to talk and see what, where there are possibilities. But I mean, the Civil Disobedience Movement, I mean, it's still really strong. People are continuing to demonstrate, risking their lives. They're doing it in creative ways. At one stage, they'd put soft toys on the streets instead of bodies. And, they're doing flash mobs, but they're making it clear. And that's for what's really important is for us in the West to see that, people there really want peace. And it's up to them it's their decisions what they do, but they need our support. They need our support from the government level. We still haven't even, Maurice Payne, we haven't even issued sanctions on the generals and their family. And this is what our WAM group are trying to lobby to get that, as well as recognition, and to say, do we really want someone, and the other thing I should mention, that NUG, the National Unity Government, about to take to put a case in for crimes against humanity. And this is reiterated by the Human Rights Council just a couple of days ago, who've said that, what is happening in Myanmar are war crimes and crimes against humanity. And, that the world that need to act on these. And this is happening in other places as well, but we, focusing here on Myanmar. And it's a tragedy, really, that, the Human Rights, Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 was set up to be able to stop this sort of thing, but it's the UN system seems a bit broken, that it's hard to get action.
Thank you. I know that you do a lot of wonderful work. Over the many years I've known you, your efforts seem to have always been incredibly tireless. Places, wow.
No, I just thank you, Chigwang, but it's just responding to the issues, and I've been there over so many years. It's like I have family all over. Is in effect. So it's just responding to family.
Jill, what you're doing is really remarkable. I don't think there's any more questions, are there? And anything else Jill, you'd like to say before we wrap?
Well, I did have something that...
and we will ask Venerable Chikwan to give a little blessing for Myanmar in a moment.
I just mentioned what Bhikkhu Bodhi, some of you may know of him, but he also reiterated about the reciprocal relationship in the Sangha being broken. Communities too poor and also fearful of supporting monks who would be seen as being on the side of the citizens' disobedience movement, and the monks are unable to respond to them. So this is, the tragedy really in Myanmar on so many levels, so many fronts.
And that's something we don't see in the press, is what's happening with the religion, with Buddhism, and how the military are working against that.
There's that side, but then the other side is this remarkable courage of people putting their life on the line. So many, again and again. And, the numbers who are in prison, and the military are arresting family members, even children. There are 100 children under 17 in prison, because when they're looking for someone, they can't find them, they arrest children. So, it's but yet people are strong, and they still see, we're going to win this. And people here still say that. There's no falling into a heap. It's like what Joanna Macy has talked about. If you don't do anything, you fall into despair. But if you can be part of the action, then that's where, that engaged action is where there's possibility, and there's, who knows what's going to happen. We don't know, but there's possibility.
And for us, that action is both meta to, to be one with these people in Myanmar, and to give, right?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Jill, thank you so very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
It's our great pleasure. And just to let people know again, Jack is recording this, and we'll put it up on our Sakyadhita YouTube possibly later in the week, so you can listen to it again. I'll ask Venerable Chikwan to give a blessing in just a moment, but I'd just like to quickly run through some events we've got lined up in until the end of the year. Our next webinar will be on October the 24th with Emma Slade. Emma is actually a Tibetan nun, and she's got a story that takes us from the world of high finance to becoming a Tibetan Buddhist with a teacher in Bhutan. So that should be fascinating. And then in the last week of November, we have another webinar with Ajahn Sujato, who, as you know, is a great supporter of Buddhist women. And his subject will be Believing Women. And we'll have a special end of year event with a screening of the film Bikini, probably on the 12th of December. And we'll have the director of that film, it's Malgotzia. Sharon, you can tell me if I've got that. And she'll have a Q&A session afterwards. So you'll be able to speak directly with the director. And then, of course, after Christmas on Boxing Day, for 3 days, the 17th International Sakyadhita Conference. Of course, this time it will have to be held on Zoom. The theme of the conference is Buddhist Women Beyond Boundaries, Interfaith, Interdependence and Environment. The details are still being finalised, and registration for that should be open soon. It'll be the first Sakyadhita Zoom conference. But it will be held in Malaysian time, which is good for us here in Australia. So we should be able to attend most sessions without problems. So I'd just like to thank you all very much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again at these events. And before we go, throwing to Venerable Chikwan for a blessing for Myanmar.
Oh, muted.
Good. I'd like to offer just a reflection for us all as we take so much of what we've heard from Jill today into our hearts and reflect on how we can offer our thoughts, our loving kindness, our material or financial support behind this great work that so many are doing. But firstly, may we offer the merits of this talk and what it is we feel in our hearts and what we can do to the people of Myanmar, to the monks and the nuns and the lay people who are working tirelessly, in spite of their own risks and the dangers in their lives and in their families' lives. We offer the merits to those who are in hiding, that they may feel free, that may have enough support to keep them going. Those with the Civil Disobedience Movement, both within Myanmar and abroad, that they have the strength and the confidence and the dedication to continue their work and finding, as Jill has suggested, many innovative ways to soften and share the message. And may we also offer the merits and widen our thoughts to the people of the various ethnic groups, some who have, like the Rohingya, who have been, very greatly wounded and hurt and killed and made homeless. May they also have the ability to live a free life in their homes and in their lands, and to practice the faith and traditions that support their beliefs. And also to reflect on all of us here, what we take away, the wonderful merits of you being present to listen to all of this, that you can share it with others and engage in some small way that makes a difference in the people of Myanmar towards a truer democracy, greater freedom, and greater peace. Mahavanya Paramita.
Thank you, Chikwan. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
And thank you all. I'll say good night.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Jill.
Hi, Scott. Hi, Sky. How are you?
You're muted, Sky. You're still on mute, Sky.
How long was your retreat, Sky?
How long was it?
Yeah.
Oh, it was just a week I could go for. I can go up there quite often for a week, and